You know that feeling when you finally decide that today is the day everything changes. You are going to get focused.
Oh, absolutely. The classic burst of morning motivation.
Right. So you sit down at your desk, you clear away the coffee cups, you open a laptop, and you just stare at the screen.
Yeah, just waiting for the magic to happen.
Exactly. You try to force your brain to zero in on the one crucial task that is actually, going to move the needle in your career or your personal life.
Mm.
But within 5 minutes, it turns into a total disaster.
Like clockwork.
Yeah, you find yourself organizing your digital folders by color, or doom scrolling through social media, or, I don't know, intensely researching a new hobby you know you are never actually going to start.
Right, like suddenly you really need to know how to bake sourdough bread.
Yes, it's this universal struggle, trying to force focus almost always backfires. It just leaves you feeling entirely defeated before lunch.
And we treat focus like it is a physical muscle, right? Like we can just flex it harder if we grit our teeth.
Yeah, like if we just try harder.
But when that brute force method fails, we tend to blame ourselves for a lack of discipline, or we blame the environment. We buy those expensive noise-canceling headphones.
Why I bought so many pairs.
Right. We download website blocking apps, we lock our phones in another room, and yet the fundamental problem remains completely unsolved. The urge to distract ourselves just shifts to something else.
It really does. And that dynamic is our central mission for this deep dive. We're going to figure out why trying to brute force your focus is a losing battle from the very start.
Which is going to save a lot of people a lot of frustration, honestly.
I hope so. Because more importantly, we're going to uncover the hidden mechanism that actually drives high achievers.
Yeah.
The people who never seem to struggle with staying on task.
The ones who just seem naturally dialed in.
Exactly. And our material today comes from a short but incredibly dense excerpt from a YouTube video by Dwyer. It's titled, "The Hidden Secret to Focus."
It's such a fascinating piece of content.
It really is. Greg is sharing a profound lesson he learned from a man named Anthony. And what makes it interesting is that Anthony isn't a Silicon Valley productivity guru or a business coach.
No, not at all.
He is a veteran hypnotist and a speaker who traveled the world observing audiences for 44 years.
Which completely changes the framework. Someone with that specific background, spending decades observing the human mind from the perspective of hypnosis, they look at human behavior through a completely different lens.
Right. They aren't looking at your morning routine.
Exactly. A productivity expert might look at your calendar, but a hypnotist looks at the underlying operating system of your brain. They are dealing directly with the mechanics of the unconscious mind.
And that perspective, it just completely flips conventional wisdom on its head. Most advice tells you how to manage distractions. But Anthony's premise is that everything we think we know about getting distracted is fundamentally flawed.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. The foundation of Anthony's argument rests on the functional difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind. Greg points out in the material that the conscious mind is, by its very evolutionary nature, easily distracted.
It has to be, right, for survival.
Exactly. It is designed to notice the ping of a phone, just like it was designed to notice a rustling bush in the wild.
Because that rustling bush could be a tiger.
Right. So if you are relying on that highly reactive conscious mind to fundamentally change your life or to build a business or to maintain deep focus, you are just going to fail.
Because a conscious mind is where our ego lives. It is where our daily willpower is generated.
The part that says, I'm going to work really hard today.
Yes.
Yeah.
That voice in your head actively declaring that intention. But willpower is a finite resource. It depletes every single time you make a decision or resist a temptation.
It runs out so fast.
It really does. Relying on it is it's like trying to heat a massive house by lighting individual matches.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It requires constant, exhausting effort. And the moment you stop striking matches, the house just goes cold.
And Anthony contrasts that exhausted conscious mind with the unconscious mind, which operates entirely on autopilot. It is the furnace of the house.
Exactly. It's just running in the background.
Because of this dynamic, Anthony drops an absolute bombshell quote on Greg in the video. He says, and I quote, "Distraction isn't the problem. The problem is the untrained mind."
What's fascinating here is that he dismisses the very thing everyone else is obsessing over.
Yeah, he just throws the whole distraction argument out the window.
He really does. Greg even pushes back in the story, asking how distraction couldn't be the problem when there is noise and interruption everywhere. But Anthony holds firm.
Because he's looking at the root cause.
Right. As a hypnotist, he intimately understands that the unconscious mind is the engine running the show. If that autopilot hasn't been programmed with a destination, fighting surface-level distractions with your conscious mind is completely useless.
It's a losing battle.
Exactly. The real issue is that the mind itself hasn't been trained on where to steer. It has no filtering mechanism for all that external noise.
I want to try an analogy here to visualize this dynamic. Let's say, let's say trying to force focus with your conscious mind is like being a panicked captain standing on the deck of a massive ship.
Okay, I like this. Paint the picture.
So you are screaming at the waves, you're yelling at the crew, and you're trying to manually push the boat against the wind. It's pure
It's
chaos.
this absolute panic on deck.
Right. But meanwhile, down below deck, the unconscious mind is the autopilot system, and it is quietly, stubbornly steering the vessel wherever it was already programmed to go. It is completely ignoring the captain screaming.
That is so accurate. The captain on deck is exhausted by the weather, the notifications, the emails, all that external friction.
Yeah, all the noise.
But the autopilot below deck doesn't care about the weather at all. It only cares about coordinates.
Just the math.
Exactly. If you haven't gone down into the system and given the autopilot explicit trained coordinates, it is just going to drift. Or worse, it is going to follow whatever random societal currents come along.
Which is terrifying.
It is. The captain screaming on deck is burning an immense amount of energy, but the ship's actual trajectory isn't changing one bit.
Which perfectly explains why we feel so drained at the end of a distracted day.
We put in all the effort of the screaming captain.
Right, we put in all that frantic effort, but we get absolutely nowhere. So if the root issue isn't our phones, and it isn't our noisy office, but rather this untrained mind, we need a way to diagnose our own mental state.
We need to figure out what our ship is actually doing.
Yes, we need a way to see what our autopilot is actually programmed with. And that leads directly to a powerful field test that Anthony used to perform right from the stage during his speaking tours.
And we should frame Anthony's background a bit more here to understand why this specific test carries so much weight. He started in the real estate industry 44 years ago, then he moved into direct sales. He eventually built a career speaking all over the country. He was making between $5,000 and $20,000 per speech.
Which is serious money.
Very serious. He spent his entire life studying top performers across various industries and analyzing what makes them tick.
He really had a front row seat to thousands of ambitious people. And he made a crucial observation early on. He would tell his audiences that it is incredibly easy to get motivated, but it is incredibly hard to stay motivated.
Because motivation is simply the captain on deck.
Right.
It is a conscious burst of energy, and a burst of energy might get you through like a single difficult weekend project, but it cannot sustain a 4-decade career.
No, it burns out.
It burns out fast. It cannot build a complex business or fundamentally alter your life trajectory. You really need the autopilot to handle that sustained journey.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. To demonstrate this difference between fleeting motivation and a programmed autopilot, Anthony would execute a test live from the stage.
This is my favorite part of the whole source.
It's so good. He would walk out into the audience, point to a random person, and ask one simple, direct question. He'd ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Such a classic question.
Classic, right? But he noted a distinct pattern in how the vast majority of people responded. Let's call them the vague majority. When asked the question, they would almost always physically look up at the ceiling.
They break eye contact.
Exactly. Then they would stumble through these incredibly ambiguous answers. They would say things like, well, I'd like to see myself making more money, or I'd like to be in a better house, or simply, I don't know, I'd like to see myself doing better.
The word better is the ultimate red flag of an untrained mind.
How so?
Because better is not a coordinate. The autopilot system cannot plot a mathematical course to better. It is merely a general direction, like telling a navigation system to just drive north.
You'll just keep driving forever.
Right. You will eventually hit something, but you have absolutely no control over where you actually end up. The brain cannot filter out distractions if it doesn't have a specific destination to measure those distractions against.
But there was always an exception to this vague majority. Once in a while, and Anthony noted this didn't happen often, he would walk up to an audience member, point his finger, and ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
And their reaction is totally different.
Night and day. This person wouldn't look up at the ceiling. They would look directly into Anthony's eyes. They would often repeat the question back to him to confirm it, And then they would unleash a torrent of granular details.
Just absolute specifics.
Yeah, they wouldn't just say they wanted more money. They would name the exact dollar amount they were going to earn. They wouldn't say a better car. They would name the exact make, model, and color of the car.
Right.
They knew exactly what their daily life would look like.
This raises an important question. What is the actual correlation between that extreme, almost obsessive specificity and real-world success?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because Anthony points out that whenever he encountered someone who could lock eyes and rattle off those exact metrics, he would always follow up by asking about their current position in their company or industry. And the answer to that follow-up question was identical every single time.
They were always the top performer, every time.
Always.
They would reply that they were the top realtor in their association or the #1 salesperson in the company. Without fail, the hyper-specific people were dominating their fields.
It's incredible.
It is, but I want to look closely at the physical cues Anthony describes here, because it feels like there might be an alternative explanation.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
The vague people look up. The specific people lock eyes and hold their ground. Is it possible that the specific person is just like an arrogant, highly confident salesperson? Is that eye contact just a physical manifestation of bravado rather than an autopilot that truly knows its destination?
It's a fair question, but if we analyze those physical cues through the lens of cognitive load and memory retrieval, the bravado theory just falls apart.
Really? How does that work?
Think about it. When someone asks you a complex question about the future and you physically look up, what is your brain actually doing? It is searching. You are visually accessing the creative, improvisational centers of your brain.
Like you're literally trying to find the answer on the ceiling.
Exactly. Your conscious mind is scrambling in real time to invent a plausible 5-year plan because you do not actually possess one. You are manufacturing an answer on the spot.
Ah, so the person who locks eyes isn't inventing anything at all. They're just reading the data.
Precisely. They do not need to look up to search for the answer because the answer is already hard-coded into their autopilot. They are simply reciting the coordinates that drive their daily actions.
So it's not ego.
No, that unblinking eye contact isn't arrogance at all. It is the physical byproduct of absolute practiced clarity. Their brain isn't experiencing any cognitive load to answer the question.
Wow. That reframes the entire concept of a top performer. We tend to think people dominate their industries because they possess some, I don't know, superhuman level of drive or motivation.
Some genetic gift.
Right. But in reality, they are top performers because their minds are trained on granular, exact targets. The autopilot knows the destination down to the decimal point, which completely changes how they operate on a random Tuesday morning.
When the destination is that specific, you eliminate the need to waste conscious energy figuring out what to do each day.
It takes the guesswork out of it.
Exactly. The untrained mind wakes up, feels overwhelmed by an inbox, and asks a vague question. What should I do to get better today?
And the brain just freezes.
The brain has to process a million variables to answer that. But the trained mind wakes up and says, my exact target is this specific metric. Does responding to this email move me closer to that metric, yes or no?
The decision-making process becomes binary.
Completely binary. The decision fatigue that typically leads to doom scrolling is just completely eliminated because the autopilot is actively filtering the environment for you.
We have established a very clear divide here. On one side, we have the vague dreamers looking at the ceiling, hoping for a generic concept of better, and constantly battling distraction.
The screaming captains.
Right, the screaming captains. And on the other side, we have the hyper-specific top performers, locking eyes, naming car models, and effortlessly filtering out the noise. Greg Dwyer had the exact same thought while listening to this, so he asked Anthony the core question.
The most important question of the whole discussion.
Yes. He asked, what is the actual cognitive difference between these two types of people?
And Anthony's answer provides the most profound insight in the entire material. He tells Greg that the fundamental difference between the vague majority and the specific top performer comes down to a single word.
Imagination.
Imagination.
Which, honestly, sounds completely counterintuitive at first glance.
It does. It sounds like the opposite of focus.
Right. Usually when we picture someone who is easily distracted, we assume they have too much imagination. We picture them daydreaming, staring out the window with their head in the clouds.
Just kind of lost in their own world.
Yeah. But Anthony introduces a crucial dichotomy about how this mental tool is deployed. He argues there are two completely different functional ways to use imagination. One person uses their imagination to escape reality.
And the other uses it to create reality.
Exactly. The other person uses their imagination to create reality. So what does this all mean?
That functional distinction is the key to the entire focus problem. Let's break down the mechanics of escaping reality first.
Okay, let's hear it.
The audience members who looked up at the ceiling and said they wanted a better house were using their imagination as a psychological coping mechanism. Their current reality might be stressful, chaotic, or unfulfilling.
Which is very common.
Very common. So to deal with that discomfort, they use vague fantasies of better to temporarily soothe their nervous system. It acts as a mental vacation.
Ah, a vacation.
But a vacation is just a temporary departure. It is not a permanent destination you are actively engineering.
Let me try another analogy to crystallize this difference. Using your imagination to escape reality it's like putting on a high-end virtual reality headset to ignore the fact that your physical living room is incredibly messy and falling apart.
I love that.
So you look around to the VR world, and everything is pristine, beautiful, and peaceful, and you feel a sense of relief for a few minutes.
Like you feel better.
Yes, but the moment you take the headset off, you are still sitting in a messy room. The environment hasn't changed, and your brain knows it was just a simulation.
You consumed the product of your imagination, but you didn't apply it to the physical world. It provided comfort, but zero utility.
So that's escaping reality. But using your imagination to create reality, which is what the top performers are doing, operates on a completely different mechanical level.
It's active, not passive.
Exactly. It is not a VR headset.
Yeah.
It is like sitting down in that messy, chaotic living room, grabbing a blank piece of paper, and using your imagination to draw up the exact architectural blueprints to renovate the space.
You're doing the work.
You are. You are imagining the precise dimensions of the new shelves, calculating the exact cost of the materials, and choosing the specific color of the paint. You aren't escaping the room at all. You are mentally constructing its replacement.
If we connect this to the bigger picture and bring this full circle back to the struggle of sitting at your desk trying to work, this blueprint concept is exactly how you solve the distraction problem.
That's the secret.
It is. When you use your imagination to draw up those detailed, mathematically precise blueprints, you are finally programming the autopilot of your unconscious mind. The coordinates are officially set.
The ship finally knows where it's going.
Yes. And once the unconscious mind accepts those coordinates, it begins to alter your perception of your environment. Distractions begin to fall away naturally, not because you're using brute force willpower to ignore your phone, but because your unconscious mind is now relentlessly obsessed with executing the blueprint.
Anthony actually defines true focus through this exact lens. He states that the person who is not distracted is simply using their imagination in such a way that they are actively creating their reality.
It's brilliant.
It really is. It isn't that the specific person doesn't see the smartphone on their desk or hear the noisy coworkers. It's that the reticular activating system in their brain flags those inputs as totally irrelevant to the blueprint.
It just filters it out before it even registers as a distraction.
Right. The captain on the deck can finally stop screaming and just relax, because the autopilot below deck is locked onto a hyper-specific coordinate and is automatically steering the ship through the storm.
This requires a complete reframing of our relationship with our own goals and our own failures,
It really does. It takes away that shame of not having enough willpower.
Exactly. If you find yourself constantly distracted, organizing digital folders instead of doing the work that matters, it isn't a failure of your discipline. It is a failure of your imagination.
You just haven't drawn the blueprint.
You simply haven't made your desired reality specific enough to engage the immense processing power of your unconscious mind. The autopilot is sitting down there waiting for exact numerical coordinates, and all you have given it is a sticky note that says, "Go somewhere better."
And lacking clear instructions, it just wanders aimlessly, reacting to whatever shiny object crosses its path.
It is just drifting in the ocean, waiting for a current to push it.
We have covered some really significant ground today by dissecting this single conversation between Greg Dwyer and a veteran hypnotist. We started by dismantling the myth that external distractions are the enemy, realizing instead that the true culprit is an untrained mind operating on a vague, directionless autopilot.
We threw away the noise-canceling headphones.
Exactly. We examined Anthony's literal litmus test for this condition, the physical difference between looking up to search for a vague escape hatch versus locking eyes and reciting exact pre-programmed coordinates.
The cognitive load of focus.
Right. And finally, we redefined the purpose of imagination itself. shifting it from a tool used to escape a messy room into the architectural blueprint required to renovate it.
The ultimate takeaway from Anthony's 44 years of observation is recognizing that your unconscious mind is always working. The engine down below deck never shuts off, and the autopilot is always engaged.
It's always running.
Always. The only variable you actually control is whether you are intentionally programming the destination.
So I want you to evaluate the state of your own autopilot right now. Put yourself in that auditorium. Imagine Anthony, the veteran hypnotist, walks down from the stage, walks directly up to your chair, points a finger at you and asks, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?"
A heavy question.
Pay attention to what your body does. Do you break eye contact and look up at the ceiling, searching for a vague fantasy to escape your current stress? Do you tell him you just want things to be better? Or do you lock eyes and name the exact salary, the precise job title, and the specific reality you are currently engineering?
It is a deeply confronting diagnostic test if you are entirely honest with yourself about the cognitive load it takes to answer it.
It strips away all the illusions we have about our own drive. And I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over, building entirely on Anthony's premise about the unconscious mind.
Let's hear it.
We know the autopilot is always running. We know that using imagination to merely escape reality fails to give that autopilot specific coordinates. If your autopilot lacks its own specific coordinates, is the greatest danger simply that you fail to get what you want out of life? Or is the reality far more insidious?
What do you mean?
Well, if you leave your autopilot blank, is the greatest danger that it will simply default to building someone else's reality instead.
Oh, wow. That is the ultimate unseen cost of a drifting ship. Without your own coordinates, you inevitably end up dropping anchor in someone else's port, serving their blueprint instead of your own.
Think about the coordinates you are giving your autopilot the next time you sit down at your desk and try to force yourself to focus. Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.